when you were talking about how, with all the pictures or the ugliness that we see in the world, or, even in other people,
Yes.
That it's where, humanity is blocked.
Right.
And I thought it was so profound and helpful, to see that. And you also mentioned that, whenever we think we're going to do better, or we don't know what to do, or we're stressed, that, God is on it always.
Right.
There is one thing that I find myself always struggling with, especially now, with, like you're saying, what's happening in the world and politics and, watching the news. And I try to be very careful because images and sounds are very difficult to delete.
Right.
And I was watching something, on Syria, what's happening in Syria, and, some images that were so difficult. And I just heard myself say, God, why can't you just stop it? And I find that this, is such a strong level of pain, that in life I'm able to balance things out. Obviously, there's always learning and constant attention to, like you said earlier, get those books, reconnect, all of that. But for something like this, I feel like I have a block, I feel like there's a part of me...
Wait, but I'm with you until that moment. What do you mean you have a block? I don't see where you have a block. The fact that you feel agony...
Yes.
The fact that you feel agony about those children in Syria is a sign of mental health. That's the thing. People are saying, like, something's wrong with me, I'm upset. It's like I said earlier tonight. The fact that you're upset by these things is a sign that you are mentally healthy. The fact that someone is not upset by those things is a sign that they're not mentally healthy.
Yes.
That's a huge issue in America today. There are 12,000 children starving every day on this planet, 1 every 4 seconds. And Jesus, the night before the crucifixion, when the disciples were falling asleep, he said, "Can you not remain awake with me 1 hour in the hour of my agony?" So you are remaining awake in the hour of someone's agony is a sign of an evolved human being.
But what I'm not able, I think where more my block is, how to, I understand completely, obviously, yes, it's beyond, compassion and feeling for these atrocities, but I get upset at God.
You get upset at what?
At God sometimes.
God didn't do that.
God didn't do that.
Whoa,
yeah.
whoa,
I mean,
whoa.
No, it's human, yeah.
No. Well,
I
let's
have
talk
to say,
about that.
why can't you stop it?
No, wait. Well, he can't stop that because of free will. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, 12,000 children starve on this planet every day. There is no dearth of food. God's not doing this. People are. Now, I cannot speak specifically to the issue of Syria because Syria is a very complicated situation. But in many situations on this planet where we see the deepest human suffering, do not kid yourself how often American foreign policy, directly or indirectly, had a hand in blocking forces that might have ameliorated that suffering. Their karma might be to suffer. Your karma is to be a kick-ass American woman who shows up at these midterms and stops this stuff. Right? So this is the issue. It's like, well, maybe it's their karma to starve. Yeah, well, it's your karma to not ignore their starvation. That's the thing. And so much of that, look how the ego would displace it onto God. God didn't do this. We know Assad's name. We know what's happening in Syria, and it's complicated. I'm not blaming the United States. I'm not blaming the United States the United States does much good, and it's time for the American people to wake up out of our naivete and so forth. So this displacement, don't you go blaming God. Because I love it, don't you go blame. I mean, if we have been, and that's what's so much of going on now in politics, if you have in any way been disengaged, if you have not participated, of course it's convenient to now blame Trump. This did not come out of nowhere. This crisis we're in was the result of an accumulated layer upon layer that had more than anything to do with the fact that some of the best and the brightest America just figured somebody else would handle it. So we have to right things now. And every moment that once you've seen it, I remember I read a book once, Was it called Less Than Zero? Bret Easton Ellis? Such a devastating book. Such a completely devastating book. And after I read that book, I thought, I don't have to read one more book or one more newspaper article to know that I should live the rest of my life doing what I can. Because every moment that you're bemoaning that, you're not working on getting the people elected on November 6, 2018, that will represent a shift in direction. Now, that might not be specific to Syria, but to so much suffering in this country and on this planet that has to do with policies, economic policies, social policies, political policies, both domestically and internationally. So I think that's what we want to remember. God didn't do these things, people did these things. People did these things. And it's time to face the urgency of this moment. It's the 11th hour. It's not midnight yet. So just know that that's what the ego would displace it onto God. And the ego would have us bemoan it and once again, look at the crucifixion, but do not dwell on it. It's like there are many hours in the day. You cry and. So the fact that you could look at an article about Syria and look at those children and look at one of the pictures I saw was a man holding the little child with blood all over them. Yes, it makes you cry. You know, the other day I was in Oklahoma City and I was at the airport. And I went to the ladies' room and I came back from the ladies' room and I'd been in the cafe at the airport there. When I came back to the room, everybody in the cafe was standing up, and everybody was looking out the window, and nobody was saying a word. And what it was a plane that had landed. They put water over the plane. The hearse comes up. The military pallbearers were standing there. I had never seen it in person. The families in a shuttle. And they opened the thing, and the flag-draped coffin comes out. You saw the family get out of the shuttle. You saw the people going over to the coffin. Who knows where this soldier was? I don't know if it was a male or female. And everybody was just standing. There was not a beep. Everybody was silent. And I just cried and cried. A lot of people did. How could you not? That soldier had died wherever they had died and was coming back home to Oklahoma to be buried, and watching what I think must have been the mother crying at the casket. And then you get up when that's over, and it was interesting because then when the hearse drove away and the shuttle drove away and everybody sort of very quietly goes back, to their whatever they were doing in the cafe at the airport, but nobody was just chattering quickly. We go through those moments and they touch us, but they're important. We don't want to be people who wouldn't cry at that. You don't want to be a woman who wouldn't cry looking at those children in Syria. Only a sociopath doesn't. Only a sociopath, when people say, when you feel bad about something you did wrong and somebody says, oh, don't feel bad, only a sociopath has no remorse. One of the most powerful lines in the Bible, Jesus wept. And then you get up and dry your tears, and there are a lot of hours in the day, and you participate in a system, and that soldier is a perfect example. Does that make sense? We cry and it's part of your humanness. Okay.